Welcome to Astrobites, a podcast featuring tales of planetary alchemy to help you journey consciously and in tune with the universal space that surrounds you. I'm SILVIA GUERSENZVAIG, your host. I follow the moon, and every 2 weeks I'll bring you something to munch on about the energies at play and how to best navigate them. Greetings and welcome everyone to the special edition of Astrobites featuring the dawn of the Aquarian era. Today with guest speaker Brian Francis CULKIN, writer, movie director, astrology researcher, and an old friend of mine. Hey Brian, happy to welcome you again to my show.
I'm so glad to be here speaking with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Our listeners might be curious to know what is an astrological era, to start with.
Sure. It's a very good question, and I feel like a lot of people don't fully grasp exactly what it is, because it's not just an astrological concept. It's an astronomical concept as well. It's a mathematical construct, and it is basically it's somewhat complicated. But to simplify, it is the idea that the Earth's axis is in a state of constant wobbling. That's the word people use. It's wobbling, and it's moving very slowly, about 1 degree every 73 years. So the entire process of rotation is approximately 26,000 years. And if you divide that by 12, you get approximately 2,160 years. So in age, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, whatever, the age of Taurus, they're all approximately 2,100 years, 2,160 years. And how do we know when the age of Aquarius is starting? How do we know when the age of Pisces is starting? This is related to, now this is when it gets a little bit complicated, but just to simplify as best as I can, the intersection of the ecliptical plane, the path of the sun, with the celestial equator, the Earth's equator extended out through space, this intersection is what we call 0 degrees Aries. This is the inception of the tropical zodiac. However, with this continual movement of the Earth's axis, 0 degrees Aries, this intersection of these 2 points, is not always at the constellation Aries. It's moving, right? So in age is when that intersection, which is always 0 degrees Aries, the intersection of the ecliptical plane with the celestial equator, switches signs. So when it's in the sign of Pisces, we call that the age of Pisces, which we have been in, and we're currently transitioning out of into the age of Aquarius. So that, again, you could talk about this for a while, and we can certainly get into more detail than that, but that's the basic idea. It's that this intersectional point, which is 0 degrees Aries, it's constantly in a process of changing. It's very slow, though. Like I said, it's a 26,000-year process to go all the way around the zodiac. And in these different moments, and especially in a moment like ours, where we're clearly in a process of transition from Pisces to Aries, you start to see some fireworks. You start to see some geopolitical, cultural, psychological changes, which seems to be happening right now with the current state on planet Earth.
Right, and there is like a transition phase that it's not so linear, the division, and like you're saying, we're like in a transition phase of ending one era and beginning another era. And in your view, what exactly the age of Aquarius means?
This is another excellent question, and I think that Aquarius, to understand any sign, it has to be seen in relationships to other signs. So Aquarius is in a relationship to the other 11 signs. And I think, speaking about Aquarius strictly, what we are dealing with is a political project first and foremost. This is why Aquarius is associated with technology, utopia, communism. Aquarius is a sign that is inherently linked to abstract ideas of freedom, technology, global consciousness. But it's an inherently collective sign. Once you get to the end of the zodiac with Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, you're dealing with more collective issues. It's not necessarily reduced to individual psychology. You are in this part of the zodiac, you are fundamentally dealing with collective structures. And specifically with Aquarius, you're dealing with technological processes, kind of, yes, revolutionary movements. It's because what Aquarius does, when you think of it in the structure of the zodiac, it's repolarizing Capricorn energy. And Capricorn energy is very linear, corporate, hierarchical, rational. Aquarius comes along after Capricorn, and it repolarizes that, and it tries to bring about freedom, emancipation, technology that can be used by all people versus just a kind of Capricornian elite. That would be a simple explanation of Aquarius. I don't know if you would agree with that, because you're obviously you have your own interpretation of Aquarius, but that's how I would generally explain Aquarian values.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, that transition and that segment of the zodiac being so universal, so collective. And we are having the end of this Capricornian, like the Plutonian Capricornian era, where there's a lot of the old status quo and a lot of the old structures that are crumbling, really. Also supported by the aspect with Uranus and Saturn that is happening from Aquarius and Taurus. So I'm thinking about when I hear you talking, I'm thinking about blockchain and the new currencies and social justice and all of that. Yeah. Sure. Wonderful.
So, like something like blockchain is most definitely something that would emerge from an Aquarian paradigm, because it is, even though, in my personal opinion, there are all kinds of problems with blockchain, but I think in another way, it is trying to, blockchain is an accounting technology, and it's trying to move away from these big, accounting firms like whatever, Price Waterhouse or Anderson, whatever, and trying to make it more egalitarian, more technological based. So in that sense, it's fine. But in my own personal opinion, I think blockchain reproduced, it doesn't do anything about the inherent greed and selfishness and other things that are part of the pre-existing capitalist order.
Yeah, I agree with
that. But it's certainly Aquarian. It's certainly Aquarian in the sense of how it's related specifically to technology and liberation. Definitely Aquarian.
Yeah, and the new concepts of decentralized economy or finances and all of that is. I see that as an early stage. Obviously, the cryptos and I can already anticipate every bank having a cryptocurrency, that will represent them. Oh, most sure, they're not going to be behind. And you spoke about the socialism, the communism, the equality of Aquarius, and also in terms of the frequency, in terms of the consciousness. I think we are beginning to see people really being open to the new ideas that spin around the cosmic self, right? The connection with yoga, the connection with meditation, also the emergence of the natural medicines to cure, all, anxieties and depressions and things like that. There's and what I also see especially with Saturn being there, that there is a collective need to recover the old ancient wisdoms, of the past, like ageless wisdom, from cultures, native cultures, old cultures that that are earthy, that are connected to the healing of the earth, and equally create peace and well-being and respect among people. And that's wonderful. I'm so excited about what's going on these days, even though we're going through, certainly a cathartic era of time. How different is this new era Aquarian from the one that is ending, the Piscean? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's the other thing, just so we don't confuse people, is that normally the structure of the zodiac is moving in a counterclockwise direction. So it's going Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Whereas the precession of the equinoxes, the ages move in a clockwise direction. So you're going the opposite way, Pisces, Aquarius, that way. So we have been in the age of Pisces. And what's interesting, and you made this point earlier, is that we know for certain mathematically that this entire process takes 25,920 years. And we know for certain that each one of these eras is 2,160 years. However, what we don't know is when each of them exactly start. So we don't know mathematically when the age of Aquarius starts, but most astrologers, and for that matter, most astronomers, peg it around the middle of the 21st century. So we're basically right in the cusp at this moment between Pisces and Aquarius. We're right in the cusp. And the transition phase of anything, it's always a little bit bumpy. And clearly today things are bumpy, and clearly they're going to get more bumpy. But I think Pisces, in my opinion, if I was to define the age of Pisces, I would use two different adjectives to describe it. The first would be metaphysical, in the sense that the Piscean age, which began right before the birth of Christ up until now, was very preoccupied with questions of God, with questions of what lies beyond material reality. I think that will change in the age of Aquarius, because Aquarian spirituality is much more concerned with immanence. It's seeing God not so much up in the sky, but part of nature, part of earth, part of social processes, part of biological processes. So I think that's a big difference. Yeah. The second thing in terms of the age of Pisces, would you agree with that or no?
Yes, I totally agree with that, especially when you say the biological. I mean, it's like really connecting with the God within, right? The spiritual, the essential spark within ourselves as humans. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Because Pisces, the age of Pisces, and not just in the great religions that have emerged during Pisces, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, but also philosophy. I mean, the entire history of Western philosophy, from let's say Plato to Martin Heidegger in the 20th century, these are people who are all concerned with metaphysical questions. What is beyond? How does consciousness work? These are the questions. Aquarius less so, because Aquarius is a sign, like I said, where if there is spirituality, because I wouldn't necessarily even call Aquarius a very spiritual sign, but if it is, it's here and now. It's not up in the sky. It's part of our social becoming. The second part of Pisces, I would say, in my opinion, in analyzing its political formation and historical formation, it's very sacrificial. Pisces is a sign of victims, of victimhood and sacrifice. And when you look at the historical development of Pisces, what you find politically, slavery, feudalism, colonialism, serfdom in Russia, all of these different social processes that were very sacrificial in nature. And of course, that reaches a high point in 21st century global capitalism. What we will find in Aquarius is this kind of sacrificial logic that was part of Pisces. It's going to change, and it's already changing now when you see things like Black Lives Matter and all these different movements that are emerging. Aquarian is much more, in its orientation, communistic. And when I say communistic, I don't necessarily mean Marxist, but it's more communal. It's less sacrificial. Now, this is not to say Aquarius doesn't have a dark side of its own, because it most certainly does. but it's not as explicitly organized around victims and sacrificial processes the way Pisces was. That's what I would say. I'm not sure if you would agree with that, but that would be my own interpretation of another aspect of the transition.
Yeah, and that makes me think about the times of inquisitions and so on, where there were a lot of pogroms and persecutions, religious differences.
Absolutely.
Not being able to accept. In Aquarius, we're accepting, like you're saying, is in the moment. We're accepting our differences, right? And thinking about Aquarius as a frequency is a mental sign. And so there is a
mental sign.
Yeah, there's a mental sign, and it's fixed in its expression. And there is also a quality of course, through the innovations and technologies, to be detached, emotionally detached. And I think you spoke about the dark side of the constellation, and I think if there is something to watch for, is that element of being removed from the experience, of the body, and being way too much into the technology, get almost sucked in, which we all experience already, computers, phones, and things like that, and becoming not heartless, but emotionless, if you wish, very, very dry.
Definitely heartless. I think you're right on. I mean, that's a real danger. That just like Pisces had its own dark side, the dark side of Aquarius energy is technological abstraction. It's when the human subject is overtaken by systems and technological processes. And when you look, for instance, of someone like Elon Musk, who wants to hook up human beings, their brain, into technological hardware, I mean, that is a Aquarian dream, but it can be a nightmare. I mean, if that goes wrong, you're going to have all kinds of social problems. So this is the dark side of Aquarius, exactly what you said, being disconnected from human interconnectivity, from human intersubjectivity, and giving yourself over to political causes, technological processes, and these kind of really ungrounded, I guess, abstractions that divorce ourselves from our own emotional life. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. We become more engaged in the virtual reality, and now with with all these new developments of having land on the virtual level and being able to buy it on a virtual. I mean, it's all geared to virtuality, like having. Of course, there is a parallel reality. The sign of Aquarius has these kind of two waves, which to me indicates the above and the below, but also these parallel realities. And my sense is that the shadow of the sign is to get way too sucked into this virtuality of life.
I totally agree. I 100% agree with you, and it's a real danger. It's a very real danger.
Yeah, scary. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. And let's see, what else would you like to add to the age of Aquarius? What else would you like to share?
Well, I guess the last thing I would say is that, we are in a transition point. And I think when we think about what an age is that it's just the idea that a human being is not only being formed by its genetic or biological material, nor is it being formed by the political, cultural, or technological environment that it finds itself in. It's also being formed by the astrological or cosmological environment. And a lot of intellectual, actually, just to interrupt myself, I think the Aquarian age will be an astrological age. I think in 100 years from now, if Harvard and MIT are still around, they will undoubtedly be giving courses on astrology, because Aquarian is an astrological phenomenon, in my opinion. And I think that, people like yourself, people like Rick Tarnas, these people like you guys who are bringing astrology to the world, this is eventually going to end up in Ivy League schools and during the Aquarius age. But
I agree.
I think an astrological age is like a paradigm. It's like it's filtering our thought and passively structuring our value system, our consciousness, and the way we organize our communal and political life. And I think in that change, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not strictly the way we organize ourselves as human beings. It's not strictly a biological thing, nor is it a cultural or political thing. It's also, for lack of a better word, an astrological thing. We are always being passively influenced and governed by these cosmic linguistic processes. And the switch from Pisces to Aries, we're living through it right now. I mean, all of these new technologies that have emerged so quickly since the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago, to the introduction of the internet in 1995, to what's happening now. I mean, this is initiating this cosmic change, not just technological change.
Yeah, and we are letting go of the old standards. There's no standards any longer. And I think that's also part of the Aquarian era, right? It's all about individuality and freedom, like you mentioned before. And I totally agree that the cosmology is shaping our consciousness as we evolve. I mean, little kids are given computers, computers.
Sure.
And so that wires the brain differently as the times that you were born or I was born. So there are new generations that are certainly have new neuron connections that we didn't have when we were little. Yeah, and that brings
is true. That is indeed true.
Yeah, that brings different needs and different habits as kids grow older, and we see a lot happening right now in terms of the ganging and things that happen in high schools, people being abused, and there's a lot of a lot of suicides and things like that because of the media, because of the internet, because of being exposed,
Sure.
of being.
Sure,
this brings also part of
the human nervous system is in too close proximity to these very powerful computational and media forces. Absolutely. And it's causing a psychic crisis, especially in young children, in developing their own sense of self, their own subjective structure. But I mean, that's what you get. I mean, if you're going to give a 5-year-old kid a smartphone and let them use it for the next 10 years, I mean, what can you expect to happen? I mean, they're exposing their neural processing and their psychic development in direct contact with these techno-capitalist forces. So I mean, this is dangerous stuff right here. And I don't think because it's so new, I mean, I don't think you can blame the parents either, because the parents don't even know what they're doing half the time. No. I mean, these technologies are so new that we're discovering their detrimental effect after the fact.
Absolutely.
So, but I think you're right, though. I mean, there is absolutely a crisis for young people in navigating these new technological forms, and how that will manifest in the future, we don't know. But I think what we're both trying to get at is that this is part, not just a new technological paradigm, but a new astrological paradigm that's reflected in what we're calling, quote unquote, the age of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And kids are not talking anymore. They text all the time. And that for them, that's reality. That's connection. Connection is texting. And, that strips away the emotional content, the tone of the voice, the demeanor, the
sure.
juice, the juice of life. So, it's something to be aware of.
But this is exactly what you said. But this is exactly what you said 10 minutes ago. Like, this is the danger of Aquarius. It's giving yourself over to technology. I mean, this is exactly what you're describing right now.
Yeah. So let's look at the more bright side of Aquarius. Yeah. Human interaction in a healthy way. How would you envision a human interaction in a healthy way through Aquarius?
Sure. Well, like I said, the Piscean mode of social interaction is hierarchical and sacrificial. So that's why you get things like slavery, colonialism, capitalism, serfdom, all of these different social processes that are all reflecting a kind of master-slave type of dynamic. Aquarian, it's more egalitarian, it's more equal. So people aren't going to tolerate these kind of relationships that were so present in the various different forms and guises throughout the age of Pisces in a very healthy way. So again, before we were talking about the unhealthy manifestations of Aquarius, but in a healthy manifestation, Aquarian energy is very equal. It's egalitarian. We're all on the same team. We're all part of the global family. And the different, like racism, for instance, that will not, where it thrived in many ways throughout the age of Pisces, it will not thrive in the Aquarian age. The Aquarian age is about, again, in the best possible manifestation of it, global egalitarianism, global consciousness, the breakdown of borders, seeing people as equal. So that's a possible really good thing. But like you said, we have to watch out for the technological dreams of Aquarius to get in between us and disrupt that possible social becoming.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the new trend of non-binary, for instance, that is happening in schools among kids as well. They change their names, and they're exploring this phenomena, these aspects of themselves. But it's equally bringing the feminine and the masculine, together. And I'm also thinking, I'm asking myself, is the marriage institution is it going to collapse? Is it going to how human relationships would be considered, in this new age of Aquarius, because we're really entering, but we're not fully into it, and I can see the sparkles of this equalitarian, like you're saying, way
Sure.
of seeing each other and being with each other. And I'm thinking about love, right? The space of love, the quality of love, the frequency of love, that we're all beginning to understand that is not necessarily an emotional attachment, right? So we always speak about Aquarius as a detached place, but nonetheless loving, the love and the loving with detachment, right? So it's interesting, and I want to know what your points are about that. What you think?
Ooh, that's a tough question, because all of these questions we can never reduce to astrology. Like it's an interplay of the biological, the social, the political, and also the astrological. So I think it would be tough to totally reduce these unbelievable changes that you're describing. This breakdown of sexuality, like this literal collapse of sexuation that you're describing, in particular for young people. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we can attribute that entirely to the age of Aquarius, but certainly I think that Aquarian values are disruptive, they're progressive, they're revolutionary, they're idealistic, they're utopian. But I don't know. Personally, I'm kind of old-fashioned in a way. Maybe it's my Capricorn self that I kind of believe. Not that I don't think people can do what they want in their life, but I also believe in the fundamentality of men and women. So I don't know how that will manifest in the future. But I think, to your point, what's happening right now is an unprecedented change of consciousness, where young people across the world feel themselves the capacity, the ability, and I don't know what word I would use, but just to question the basis. Sexuation is the basis of human civilization, that this idea that there is a divergence of sexuality, and to see all of the various splicing and regeneration of all these new identifications of sexuality, I certainly think it has something to do with the technological and the technological and social environment that we're living in, that's produced by globalization, by capitalism, by consumerism. But I think, to your point as well, this background energy of transitioning into Aquarius also plays a role in that, because Aquarius is all about freedom. It's all about individual choice. It's all about progressive idealization. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I think is loving each other as souls without, regardless of sexual identity. I think there's something really profound that is beginning to happen, and
it could be.
It's happening
It
among
definitely could be good.
Yeah.
But it could also be maybe not good if it's not taken with that vibration of love and forgiveness and openness.
Right.
It could I mean, any sign has the possibility to descend into its shadow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Aquarius certainly, just like all signs, has a shadow. So I hope, like what you're saying, that it evolves into its best possible manifestation.
Yeah. Let me just add a little clarity also about that shadow. I think the shadow is not essentially from the constellation. I think the shadow is how we receive the frequency of the constellation.
Yes.
So if our personality is congested with fear, irritations, anger, worries, negative thinking, negative beliefs, negative conclusions, we are not transparent to the frequencies of the planets, of the
Yes.
constellations. When we are congested in that way, we are receiving those frequencies, but they are molded through our belief system and our emotional congestions. So that's how the dark side of any planet or constellation appears to be in our lives, So having said that, I think it's an invitation for people to really work on themselves, and that's my belief. The era of Aquarius, I think, is an invitation to align to the openness, the freedom, the openness. Because freedom is not only doing what I want to do, but freedom is being free from these congestions, to be transparent, to be open-minded, to be open-hearted, and things like that. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm 100% in agreement, as I think most sane people would be, because I think what you're saying is completely rational and completely, completely on point. So I'm in agreement.
Yeah, because the old schools tend to say, well, this, Saturn, or the constellations being, the dark side, or this is the low vibration. But the low vibration is how we receive it, actually. But yes, absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that. Well, anything else to close our beautiful and rich conversation today? Anything else you want to add at the end?
No, I think we covered. I think we covered an amazing amount of ground in 25 minutes. So I think that's enough.
Yes, that's wonderful. If people want to contact you, would you share with them how to contact you?
Sure. If anyone wants to contact me, my personal website is brianculkin.com, and you can get in touch with me there. Or find me on Facebook under Brian Francis Culkin, and I'm there as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian, and I hope to have you here in another topic soon. Good to talk to you.
Okay, Sylvia, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Blessings.